This is WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and you are watching True Crime with the Bet Girl, the Playa, Dangerous Davis, and the President on the Monty and Pharaoh YouTube network. Arriba!
Thanks for that great intro, Tito. I like the way he calls me the Playa, like I'm a needle
I
nose.
know.
You know?
You're a handy guy.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm a Mr. Fix-It. Well, anyway, good evening and welcome to True Crime with the Bad Girl and the Playa. I am Benny Scala, a.k.a. the Playa. And with me, as always, is my partner in True Crime. She is a New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Famer. She is Archie's mom, and damn proud of it. And she, little known fact, you're going to find out right now, is the originator of the term FAFO. And of course, I can only be talking about the very bad co-host, the Boston Bad Girl, Brittany Brown. Brittany, how are you?
I am doing so only. How are you doing?
So, yeah. I just, we were just talking backstage that a very good friend of mine, Bob Melzer, who I grew up with, my best friend growing up, year older than me, but I just found out from his sister that he passed away today. So, you know, I can publicly give my condolences to the Melzer family. Really, really nice people. They grew up 2 houses away from me in Farmingdale, Long Island. In 1969, his dad, I forget it, he worked for something in textiles and got a promotion, but they had to move to Cleveland. And they actually, I think Solon is where they live, Solon, Ohio, which I think Drew Carey actually mentioned something about that in one of his songs. But yeah, very, very, very nice family. So my thoughts and prayers to the Melzer family. But folks, as always, we must open with a quick word from our sponsor. And then this is a humdinger of a case, I got to tell you. So True Crime with the Bad Girl and the Playa is brought to you by the Burbrower Law Firm. Folks, if you've been injured in a car accident, please reach out to our good friend Adam Burbrower at the Burbrower Law Firm. Adam and his crew do things the right way with great results. Now, not only is Adam a great attorney, but the dude has framed pictures of Ernie Ladd, Johnny Rods, not to mention the Boston Bad Girl in his office. How cool is that? So if you see Adam at the community pool trying to nail that elusive triple Lindy, you'll notice superstar Billy Graham on his back and Bret the Hitman Hart tattooed on his chest. The guy is not only the man of the hour, the man with the legal power, too sweet to be sour, but he is also the excellence of elocution. Besides being a great guy, Adam is also a true crime aficionado and an avid WWF historian. Who else can get you a great settlement while waxing philosophically about the life and times of the great continental nobleman, Joe Turco, one of my favorites. Check out Adam at the Burbrower Law Firm, burbrowerlaw.com, easy for me to say, and follow him on Facebook. And don't forget to tell him the Bad Girl and the Playa sent you. So, guys, I have to start the show by giving props to a very dear friend, my friend Katie Morgan, because for several years, Katie was after me to watch the Netflix documentary about the Times Square torso killer. Now, I grew up in Farmingdale, Long Island, literally about an hour. You know, you had to take the Long Island Railroad and the subway, but you could be there in an hour. But, you know, for the life of me, and this happened in 1979, I was 24, I do not remember this case, but this gentleman, very quietly and horrifically, a gentleman by the name of Richard Cottingham, murdered and actually sometimes dismembered at least 18 women in the New York metropolitan area. And I legend has it could be a lot more than that. So, Bad Girl, have you ever been to Times Square, that part of New York City?
I did go there. A former co-worker of mine in the wrestling business, she found this great seamstress in New York City named Maria, who worked for the WWE. And we went there and got some outfits made. And that was my only time ever going and having a blast at Times Square. Little did I know about this case back then.
Yeah, I went to the the Winter Garden Theater, and I think that might have been, I saw Beatlemania and The Wiz back in that same year, 1979. But my it wasn't Times Square, but I only went to Madison Square Garden twice in my life. Once was on Thanksgiving Day, 1974, to see Elton John, which was epic. And the other time, though, was on Palm Sunday, 1970. All right, I was 14. I went to go see the roller derby, the Bay Area Bombers versus the Midwest Pioneers. Because besides wrestling, roller derby was like wrestling on wheels, right? And
right.
But anyway, my Uncle Barney, who actually at the time lived with us, my mom's younger brother, dropped me off at Madison Square Garden, and because he had a hot date in the city somewhere, and he said, "I'll pick you up at whatever, 10 o'clock, whatever time it was, 10:30." And keep in mind, I'm 14, and this is not New York City now. This is New York City 1970, whole different animal. And so little did I know that Madison Square Garden had a 7th Avenue exit and an 8th Avenue exit. And you'd think, what the hell? What's one avenue different? It's like all the difference in the world. So for about an hour and a half, here I am wandering the streets. And of course, it was a rainy night. And, and back then, no cell phones, right? There was payphones all over the place, but lots of luck trying to find. One of them literally had, I would say, about 1 foot of liquor bottles. So and of course it didn't work. Another one, like the phone, there was a cord with no phone. Long story short, I walked over to a pizzeria. The guy was nice enough to let me call my father, and he said, "Just stay in front of the garden. Uncle Barney will find you." But I didn't tell all this for that reason. The reason why I said I'm telling this story is because on the way home, Uncle Barney, and I'm, like I said, 14 going on 15, and a very naive 14 going on 15. I happen to notice there was some street lights and some very scantily clad young ladies under the street lights.
Ooh.
And I said, Uncle Barney, what are those girls doing there? He goes, they're hookers. And I literally said, I said, "What's a hooker?" And he had to explain to me what a hooker was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, here I am now 55 years later and making hooker jokes every day. And it's all due to my Uncle Barney.
That's it.
But, Bad Girl, this is the odd part about all this. Some of the most prolific serial killers that we've talked about, they were, mild-mannered family guys by day and then murderers by night. One example, Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, married to the same woman for 14 years, had the same job. I think he painted trucks, like, Peterbilt trucks, and he held that job for almost 30 years. In his spare time, he managed to rack up at least 49 murders. He's another one that, the tally is really unknown. It could be 75, 80. And then recently, Rex, I don't know if I'm going to say his name right, Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach Killer. I mean, he had a 20-plus year marriage. I think he had 2 or 3 children. And he actually was an architect in Manhattan, very prestigious job. Actually, he was featured on a TV show. And they came up to his office. But yeah, he's been charged with 7 murders. And there may be more on the way. They're still finding bodies. Now, our subject for this evening, Richard Cottingham, again, was married with 3 children, was living in Lodi, New Jersey, not the Creedence Clearwater. Oh Lord, stuck in Lodi again. I think that's California. But he was working in Manhattan as a computer operator for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we talked about this before the show. What has to be the irony of ironies. He worked in the same office as Rodney Alcala, and if anybody who's been around for a while, Rodney Alcala was called the dating game killer. He was actually on the dating game with Jim Lang, Bachelor number 3 or Bachelor number 1, I think he actually was, and he won. And after him and the girl met, she was so creeped out. She was, "I'm out of here. I'll take the runner up." And but Alcala was convicted of 8 murders, but he may have killed up to 130. He may be the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States. So, I mean, some scary shit there. So in the interest of brevity, let's get right to the case. Bad girl, as always, you get to lead off.
Wonderful. Well,
right.
This is quite the case, everybody. Richard Cottingham was born on November 25th, 1946, in the Mott Haven neighborhood of the Bronx in New York City, the first of 4 children. In 1948, his family moved to Dumont, New Jersey, and in 1956 to Rivervale, New Jersey. In 1964, he graduated from Pascack Valley High School in Hillsdale, New Jersey. His high school yearbook stated that he was a member of the school's cross country and track team.
I would venture to say he might have been on the Future Murderers of America as well.
Well, if he wasn't, he should have been.
He should have
Let's
been, right?
put it that way.
Yep.
Jeez. After graduation, he worked for Metropolitan Life, where his father was a vice president, starting in the mailroom at the firm's Manhattan headquarters and eventually becoming a mainframe computer operator upon taking some computer courses. In 1966, he became a computer operator for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, where he worked until his 1980 arrest. Now, as mentioned earlier, he worked with Rodney Alcala, then using the name John Berger, the dating game killer. Imagine that.
Yep.
Now, staff at the Travelodge Motor Inn in New York City, New York, made a call to the nearby fire department on December 2nd, 1979 at about 9 a.m. The call was made as a result of the personnel discovering significant smoke inside room 417. A do not disturb sign was hanging from the door latch of the room, which had been rented by a Carl Wilson since November 29th, 1979. 2 naked female bodies were discovered by the firefighters who arrived, and they were on 2 different beds. Prior to their deaths, both women were brutalized, and their murderer burned their bodies. Both women's hands had been severed, and the killer also beheaded them.
Jeez.
The missing body parts have never been found. Amazing. A later autopsy revealed that both women had been tortured and sexually assaulted while still alive for several days. Dida Gudazari, 22, an Iranian immigrant who worked as a prostitute, was identified shortly afterwards. The other victim remains unidentified and is estimated to be, or was estimated to be, aged 16 to 22. She is referred to as Manhattan Jane Doe, sadly.
Bad girl, real quick, and we talked about this before the show, but think about, in 1979, being a detective, none of these hotel rooms had cameras.
Right.
Nobody has a cell phone. There is no such thing. Well, there is such a thing as DNA, but it doesn't become a factor probably for like another 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
It's not like, nowadays everybody's a roving reporter because we all have cell phones. And if we did see a crime, we could immediately start recording it and, call the police and, that's
right.
that. But back then, all they had to work with was whatever they saw in the crime scene, literally, lifting fingerprints off of, evidence. They like I said, it's little wonder that any crimes were ever solved back then.
I know. It's absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you, a lot of people, I think if they kept their mouths shut, they never would have been solved.
Or kept at it. If they maybe just did it as a one-off and all right, I'm undefeated. I'll retire. Right. I think it's, and I think even with this guy, like we'll get to later on, he did the SD Jones. He went to the well one time too many, and that's what did him in.
Yep, absolutely. So Marianne Jean Reiner, 25, was discovered on May 15th, 1980. Oh, what a beautiful girl.
Yeah.
at the Seville Hotel in New York City, New York. Investigators discovered her attacker had cut her throat and removed both of her breasts. The
Yikes.
murderer had left the breasts on the headboard of the bed. Her body had also been set on fire as part of the perpetrator's attempt to get rid of evidence. Oh my God.
I mean, like that is, I mean, there is sick, but that's like beyond sick. I mean, there's no word to even describe that.
I know. So creepy. My God. Imagine
Yeah.
being the investigator and walking in the room and seeing
Yeah.
that on the
I
headboard.
would walk right into my boss and say, you know what? You don't pay me enough to do this. I need a raise.
Right. God. So after the second murder, detectives started looking at arrest records of Johns who had assaulted prostitutes in the Times Square area. They found two relevant cases, one in 1973 and 1974, that were attached to one man, Richard Cottingham. One charge was filed by the girl's pimp. In both cases, the girl did not appear in court and the charges were dismissed. So
How
let's
bad do you have
backtrack.
to be when a pimp reports you to the cops?
I know.
That, like, I
Like,
mean,
who does that?
yeah, you got to be like, I mean, pimps are the lowest of the low. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, they had a job to do, but you know what I mean. If you have a pimp turning you in, you're bad.
Yeah, I mean, you would think they don't ever go to the police for anything because
No, well,
they don't want anything to do with them.
right? Because they got to worry about well, they're gonna they're gonna lock me up if I go to the police.
Right, exactly. So yeah, you got to be. It's got to be pretty bad for a pimp to go to the cops. So let's backtrack a couple of years and go across the river to New Jersey. At approximately 7 a.m. on the morning of December 16th, 1977, the body of X-ray tech Marianne Marzi Carr, 26 years old, was found between a parked van and a chain link fence in Little Ferry, New Jersey. She was still wearing her white nurse's uniform, but her shoes were missing. Carr was last seen on December 15th in the parking lot of the Ledgewood Terrace Apartments, where Richard Cottingham and his wife had previously resided. She was kidnapped and taken to a Quality Inn in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. Once she was inside, she was beaten, bit, slashed, and raped. She had been restrained and was then strangled with a ligature. Afterwards, she was dumped in the parking lot of the Quality Inn, not far from the Ledgewood Terrace Apartments. Now, when the body of Valerie Ann Street was found at the Quality Inn in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, on May 5th, 1980, detectives connected this case with the previous case of Marianne Carr from 1977. However, they had no suspects, although at this time there was no connection to the Times Square killer. When Cottingham's wife learned that her husband was engaging with hookers in New York City, she filed for divorce soon after.
Well,
On
bad girl.
May
Let me stop
22nd.
for a minute because
Sure.
that Netflix documentary that we both saw. I mean, I thought it
Yep.
did an excellent job of like setting the atmosphere, like what it was like to be in Times Square in 1979. I mean, you talk about
Oh,
the den of iniquity. I mean, that had to be the porn and sex capital of the universe.
right. And I had no idea this stuff was going on a few hours, 4 hours from my house.
Yeah,
What a whole different world it was from where I grew up.
yeah. I mean, you work in the city, which a lot of people did. I mean, my ex father-in-law. I mean, he not that he ever did anything like that, but he worked for Metropolitan Life in on Madison Avenue, I think, and he lived on Long Island 40 years. Took the train every day. Probably spent 5 hours commuting, but like I would say Times Square is maybe like a 5 or 10 minute subway ride. So you go from like a reputable business to like, I mean, it really was. It was Sin City.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea that it was really, really like that until I watched this documentary. I was
Yeah,
just shocked. I mean,
unreal.
oh my gosh, the peep shows and the girl that they interviewed whose father started the peep shows and all of that.
I mean, you
Wow.
can actually watch
Very
live
interesting
sex
stuff.
through like, yeah,
That's something to be real proud of, huh? My dad
right, yeah.
started the peep shows. So on May 22nd, 1980, Richard Cottingham picked up 19-year-old sex worker Leslie Ann Odell on the streets of New York City. He took her to the Quality Inn in Hasbrook Heights and attempted to assault her. She screamed, which alerted motel employees to approach the room and summon the police. Richard gets arrested and taken into custody by Bergen County, New Jersey police. The police thought they might have apprehended the serial killer who murdered Valerie Ann Street and Mary Ann Carr. However, at that moment, they did not make the connection to the Times Square murders. Odell's assault took place just 17 days after Street's murder in New Jersey and a week from Reiner's in Times Square. A search of Cottingham's Lodi, New Jersey home uncovered a trophy room containing many of the personal effects of his victims.
That's
His arrest,
very common with serial killers, right? That they
yes,
want,
yes,
but it
it
was a lot. I mean, it was his downfall because, or part of his downfall, because a lot of the jewelry they recovered could specifically be identified to his victims.
absolutely, yeah. He made a lot of dumb moves. A
That
lot
was
of
a
dumb
dumb one, yeah.
moves. Yeah. So his arrest caused local detectives to re-examine several previous sexual assault cases over the past couple of years. Although Susan Geiger and Pamela Weisenfeld were sex workers, the first victim, Karen Schlitt, was a 22-year-old pregnant waitress. And now the Playa will take it from here.
The Playa, the needle nose. Well, thank you,
Playa.
Batgirl. So, um, yeah, on March 22nd, 1978, 22-year-old waitress, I think her name is Karen Schilt, was picked up by Cottingham in a New York City bar, drugged, and driven to the Ledgewood Apartments in New Jersey. Her partially clad body was discovered by a local patrolman. Now, she was beaten and heavily sedated, but she did manage to survive the incident. She wound up testifying against him. And then 19-year-old prostitute Susan Geiger was approached and propositioned by Cottingham on the night of October 10th, 1978, in Manhattan, between Broadway and 7th Avenue on West 47th Street. Now, although Susan informed Cottingham, she said she had plans that night, but they made arrangements to hook up the next day. And he actually, I guess she must have given him her phone number. He called her and asked her to meet her at midnight. And he picked her up in his vehicle, and I guess they went to a local spot. Again, he plied her with a number of drinks, drug-spiked cocktails. And Susan would later awaken covered in her own blood in room 28 of the Airport Motel in South Hackensack, New Jersey. She had been tortured by Cottingham. In addition, she had been beaten. He had beaten Susan multiple times with a garden hose and had torn her gold earrings out of her ears, which they found in his little trophy room. And then on May 12th, 1980, prostitute Pamela Weisenfeld was found beaten up in a parking lot in Teaneck, New Jersey. According to police and medical reports, Weisenfeld's attacker bit her multiple times, and after meeting Cottingham, Pamela had been drugged and brutally beaten, suffering several injuries all over her body. After being found, Teaneck police took her to a hospital to put. Now, this guy, just in the month of May 1980, and Bad Girl, I want your opinion on this. So, he murders Valerie Street on May 5th. He assaulted Weisenfeld on May 12th, 7 days later. 3 days later, he murdered Susan Rayner. That was one of the Times Square torso killings. And then he tried to murder Odell, who thankfully survived and screamed on the 22nd. So in the span of, 17 days, he murdered two women and nearly murdered two others. And it makes you wonder, like, I mean, how many of these women have not been found? What do you think? I mean, we're going to get into that later, but I mean, that's a very active serial killer.
That is a very active serial killer. And although, as you know, like you said, we are going to talk later about more, but like you and I talked about earlier, I think, and and you as well, think there's probably many more that nobody knows about. And it could go back decades before his first one that we're aware of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he went up, winds up, and we'll get into it, that he actually started in 1967 that we know about. So I have to say hello to my great friend, Katie Morgan. Hi, Katie. She's the one that gave me the idea. She bugged me. She literally said for 3 years, "Hey, have you watched the Netflix doc on the Times Square killer? You got to watch it." And this is even before we started doing the true crime. But man, oh man, you talk about a good
Oh,
tip. Yeah, that was. I
yeah.
mean, it was chilling watching that, but it was very, very well done. But
Yes.
Cottingham was indicted in Bergen County shortly after his arrest in New Jersey for the murders of Mary Ann Carr and Valerie Ann Street. Now, when this happened, this finally catches the attention of the city cops, the Manhattan cops, that are looking for the torso murderer. And so in 1981, Cottingham was convicted of the murder of Valerie Ann Street, as well as the assaults of Susan Geiger, Pamela Weisenfeld, Karen Schilt, and Leslie Ann Odell. And then in 1982, Cottingham was convicted of the murder of Mary Ann Carr. So that's two murders and 3 assaults in New Jersey. But then in 1984, he's convicted of the Times Square killings of Didi Gudarzi, Jane Doe, and they think Jane Doe was about maybe 16 or 17. She was a kid.
Ugh,
And
awful.
we're going to get into some of the ages of his victims here shortly. And Gene Rayner. Now, so years go by, like almost 30 years. The guy's just, hanging out in jail. But in 2010, he confessed to the 1967 New Jersey murder of Nancy Vogel. So that's 43 years later. And he received another life sentence. So now he's got 3 life sentences and whatever, spare change he got from the assaults. 4 years later, and he made a deal for immunity. Like that makes any difference, right? He's already got 3 or 4 life sentences. He confessed to the, and I want to bring up this graphic here, because this is sad. The 1968-1969 murders of Jackie Harp, and I think the girl on the far right is Jackie, 13 years old, Irene Blaze, 18, and Denise Velasca, 15. In in April of 2021, Cottingham confessed to the 1974 double murder of Lorraine Marie Kelly, who was 16, and Mary Ann Pryor, there's who was 17, in Montvale, New Jersey. And then on August 26, 2022, with a non-prosecution agreement, officials in Rockland, New Jersey corroborated and accepted Cottingham's confession to the 1970 murder of 26-year-old Lorraine McGraw. I believe she was a sex worker. And Cottingham's additional confession to a 1974 murder was discounted by the Rockland County Police. Why? I don't know. I mean, in June of 2022, Cottingham was arraigned from his prison hospital bed for the 1968 Valley Stream, New York murder of Diane Cusick. She was 23. She was a dance teacher. Most of these, the Times Square killings, those were sex workers, but most of these victims, and that he killed earlier, they were like, she was a dance teacher. One was a nurse. I mean, most of them were high school students.
Yeah, how awful.
And so for the 1968 murder of Diane Cusick, authorities believe that one to be the oldest criminal case to be solved and prosecuted by direct DNA evidence. And then he pleaded guilty in a court appearance on December 5th. and officially admitted killing 4 other women during 1972 and 1973 in Long Island. They were Mary Beth Hines, let me see, and she was 21. Lorraine Moy, she was 22. I think she was a mother of 2 children. Sheila Heyman, she was 33. She's the oldest of all the victims. And then Maria Emerita Rosado Nieves, who was 19.
Oh,
Just so sad. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is in March of 2023. Cottingham confessed to the 1967 Hawthorne, New Jersey murder, and that's who we're looking at right now. 17-year-old Mary Della Sala, beautiful girl. I mean, these are high school kids. They had their whole lives ahead.
How awful.
Now,
Gosh.
this one, bad girl. I want you to comment on this too. Yeah, and Katie, so young, what a waste. Yeah, I mean, she could have, I mean, they gotten married, went to their prom, had kids, grandkids. I mean, they most of them would probably still be with us, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, this is what really gets me, and I don't have an explanation for this, and maybe if you could lend, I don't know. I mean, we're logical people, but Cottingham was arrested on several lesser charges throughout his killing spree. And of course, like at this time, police weren't aware of his murders, nor are they even aware that a serial killer was active in the area. But on October 3rd, 1969, he was charged and convicted of drunk driving in New York City, and he was fined $50. Jeez, it was cheap back then. But now on August, this is what I don't understand. August 21st, 1972, he was charged and convicted of shoplifting at a Stearns department store in Paramus, New Jersey, and was sentenced to pay a $50 fine or 10 days in jail. And that's in addition to the 2 cases that the prostitutes brought against him that were dropped. But you're a serial killer. You probably by 1972, you got maybe 8 or 9 under your belt already. You know that the police are looking for somebody. Why on earth would you risk, getting arrested for shoplifting? That part I don't get.
I don't get that. And I also don't get why the fine is the same for DUI and shoplifting. I would think that would be very different.
The guy. Yeah. I mean, but you know that you're a marked man. I mean, unless you think that you're invincible and you're too smart. Now he is, and if you watch any interviews with him, he is a smug, arrogant prick. Pardon my language. So yeah, I think he's one of these people that just thinks that he was smarter than everybody.
Absolutely.
And back then a lot of it. I'm sorry.
Because then why not? If you're that smug and that arrogant, nobody's looking for me. I've done nothing wrong. He believes that he's done nothing wrong. So why not shoplift? Because if he can get away with murder, he can certainly get away with shoplifting.
Right. And, not for anything too, but, you again, go back to 1979 or even before that. Like, he started in 1967, right? A lot of it is just a battle of wits because, like I said, there's very little evidence, unless you leave fingerprints. And I mean, obviously with the torso killings, there were no fingerprints because, he dismembered them. But they also the detectives on that documentary did comment about how unbelievably clean the crime scene was for considering what happened in that room.
I know. Like, why was nobody saying, oh my God, it's a blood bath in here? Because, I mean, they were beheaded. How was it not a bloodbath?
Right. Yeah, and I think Katie's saying he set the hotel rooms. Yeah, he did. The two hotel rooms in Manhattan. I think it was I can't even think of the name of it now. But yeah, the 2 hotels in Manhattan, he did set on fire. But the fires were found fairly quickly and put
Yeah.
out. But yeah,
Wow.
but now this is what really is scary. In a 2009 interview, Cottingham claimed to have committed more than 80, and he calls them perfect murders. Right. So, I mean, I'm assuming the ones that he got caught on were not perfect. I mean, and I think he's got 18, I think I can. And let me see,
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if everybody can see this. This is a graphic, shows all the names and all the ages. I mean, how said at least half of these victims were minors, underage, still in high school with their whole lives ahead of him. But
Isn't
ahead of
that
them.
awful?
But I mean, just in that 1 month, in May, that last month when he got arrested, the fact that he killed 2 and he almost killed 2, I don't think it's a stretch that there were 80 more.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. My God, what a sick, sick person. I mean, and what's really weird is, we always hear of the John Wayne Gacy's and the Charles Manson. Those are the well-known murderers. How did someone like this, with all these murders, not be even more well-known than the people we can just name off?
I just
I
find
had
it.
never heard of this guy until.
Yeah, he definitely flew. Like I said, if it wasn't for Katie, I do not remember this. And I grew up,
No.
literally, I could drive into Manhattan in less than an hour, um, and but I do not remember this guy. You talk about flying under the radar, and here's what I don't understand, and maybe it's good that I don't understand it. How does somebody do this and then go home to a wife and kids, and then go to work for 8 hours a day and consort with your coworkers? What do you talk about? I mean,
Really talked about his fetishes.
I know that one of the gentlemen, I think his last name was Volpe, that was on the documentary, who's very honest that he did not like the guy at all, even when he worked with him. That he was just all full of himself and he was a blowhard, and he didn't seem like the most popular guy, because I think he just he was a talker.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody pretty much wrote off everything that he said also as just foolishness. He was that type of guy, it seemed like, at least at work.
Well, I mean, I know that I've worked. I mean, hopefully I didn't work with a serial killer, but like I know you probably have too. There's always that person in the office that no matter what, you come in and tell a story, they have one to top yours.
Oh,
and their whole lives are stories. And like after a while, when you see them, you want to just go into the break room or go to the bathroom.
The beeline. The beeline.
Right, yeah. The beeline exactly, to the water cooler. But yeah, I mean, and it's scary that these guys are sane enough, like Gary Ridgway, you're killing over 49 people. Maybe he could be up to like 80 or 90, and you can function in a job for 30 years. You can be married for 20. This guy, even the BTK guy, Dennis Rader, who he was in Wichita. Well, he is in prison in Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. He was actually I believe, an animal control officer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, same thing. Wife and kids. I think he killed 10 people very horrifically. But yeah, and he actually would still be free. He framed himself. I guess he sent an email anonymously, and this is like maybe, I don't know, 20 years after his last kill. And I could have this one wrong. I haven't really. It's been a while since I looked into the case, but the police by then, now you're talking in the 2000s, they were able to trace the IP address on the computer. And believe it or not, he was a deacon in his church, and that's where he sent the email from the church,
What a fool.
right? They
How
always,
dumb.
yeah, yeah. I mean, no matter what, I mean, in his case, he liked the public attention, and I guess at some
Right.
point, it was waning that he wasn't being covered in the newspapers anymore, and he wanted to fan the flames again and be relevant. So he said, "All right,
Mhm.
well, I'll just send this email, instead of doing a handwritten letter." And yeah, I think that's what nabbed him.
What a fool.
Right? Yeah. This one, like I said, I can't thank Katie enough,
Yeah, me too.
because this case, it was just, I mean, watching that, it was, I mean, kind of depressing, honestly. The
Yeah.
Netflix documentary, it was fascinating and depressing at the same time,
Right.
because
Right. I agree.
these girls had no chance. I mean,
Nope.
now we're a little bit more sophisticated, and we have cell phones, and we'll tell people where we're going, and if you don't hear from me, you can always uh, our every movement is tracked. If
Right.
we have a cell phone, whether it be a victim or the criminal, if we have a cell phone, our we're being tracked. Our
Yep.
movements are being tracked.
Absolutely.
I think I've always lived on the premise that my dad told me that when I was driving, he said, make believe there's a patrolman in the back seat of the car with you, and you'll always be good, which was really good advice. I would add that to maybe Jesus is sitting next to the patrolman, and
Yeah.
you'll never do anything wrong.
Right. That's
Yep.
actually very good advice to give a
Right.
new driver, and you'll
Yep.
never forget that either.
Right. But yeah, yeah, this one really, when I was done with the notes and everything, it's like, wow, this is
Mhm.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's not, it's not like 500 years ago. I mean, it is what, 1979 is what now, 46 years, but not that long ago.
No, I mean, to think that you and I were both growing up then, and we never even heard of it, and you were even closer than me.
I was
And I
24.
mean,
Yeah, I was working at Citibank, not in the city though. But yeah, I was working at Citibank, and I did have occasion. Judy, my first wife, we were dating at the time. Like I said, we went to go see Beatlemania at the Winter Garden Theater, and then the Wiz, both of which were like excellent Broadway shows. And then we ate at Luchow's, the famed German restaurant. I think it just closed, Luchow's. But
wow.
it was a fun place. But who knows? Like, I don't know what date it was, but who knows? Maybe we were like not too far away from that.
I know. Can you imagine? Like just not knowing what's really going on, across the street, basically.
Right. But like I said,
Crazy.
I did see the hookers, and my Uncle Barney was kind enough to very discreetly explain to me what, and it was very discreet, what they did. And like, I, now every 14-year-old kid, guy going on 15, if they were as naive now as I was back then, man, I feel bad for them. But I was very naive, and I mean, it's like, people, why do people do that? And I was incredulous that somebody would actually pay to have sex with a woman, and that a woman would actually accept the money.
I know. I know. Well, I feel the same way. And I mean, I was at that age too, very naive, very immature, didn't know a whole lot of stuff, and very sheltered, I think, probably. It sounds like we both were, like many people are. And then there are people that grow up in the city and they know everything that's going on
Right.
well before they should, really. So
I mean, New York City
crazy.
it's a fascinating place. I mean, I haven't been there in a few years now, but Central Park, don't ever go there at night, but
Ew.
during the day, it's a really cool place. Just walking around the streets of Manhattan, I don't think, I mean, there's something happening everywhere.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a bar on every street corner. There's a hot dog guy on every street corner. There's, a gazillion restaurants. It's like the hotbed of activity, and it's a lot different than it was back then. I mean, it was out of control back then. I don't know which
Oh,
of the
clearly.
mayors cleaned it up, but it's definitely come a long way. But Bad Girl, I got to say, like I said, this one flew under my radar. But holy crap, what a case! To think that a briefcase toting, clock punching family man could be responsible for ending the lives of possibly 100 young ladies. It's mind boggling, isn't it?
Totally. It's so hard to believe. And like I said, the most unbelievable thing is that we didn't know his name. People probably never heard of him. And how is that when you kill 100 people?
But not for anything. The guy is, I think, 78 now, and he doesn't look very well.
Yeah.
But I would think, and I'm not going to advocate that they should, release him, because I honestly think, even though he's pushing 80, I still think he would try to do it again if they let him out. But
Me too.
maybe make some kind of deal. I don't know, like maybe give him Funyuns in his commissary every week. But like, to fess up, and if he's really truly committed other murders, confess to them. Again, under the guise of no prosecution, because what's the difference? He's going to die in a jail cell anyway. But maybe to bring closure to the families of some of these people who, these women who have been missing for years and years.
I think that's a really good thought. I mean, I think when people get up in age and they're sickly and all that, if they haven't confessed to everything they've done, just do it. Just do it. Let these families rest after all this time,
And my understanding of serial killers from studying them is most of them are very compulsive as far as keeping records. They can tell you every one of these kills, where the Green River Killer. 49. He knew where every single body was. He knew, I don't know if he knew the girl's name. I think in some cases he did, because he took their IDs. But how, and very graphically, how he killed them.
Yeah,
He actually,
pretty crazy.
Yeah, he actually, the Green River Killer actually had, I think at the time, his son was 7 years old, and he took his son, and he picked up a hooker with his son in the car, drove to a secluded area, and left his son in the car, and actually, murdered the hooker.
Oh my God! And then got in the car and drove his kid home.
Went back to, and I don't know. I don't know what the explanation was of where the girl was. But yeah.
Wow.
The guy, unreal.
To say the least.
I guess my whole point is that if there are more, he knows where they are, and he's got all the info. So I do hope that he does fess up. 18 is
too.
Horrific. 18 is horrible, especially considering the age. And every human life is sacred. A lot of these serial killers, they do target sex workers, because I think in their minds they feel like they're less of a person, and that is not right. But I think the other reason is because most of them are runaways, and you have a head start because your family's not going to miss you.
Right.
But a lot of his victims, especially all the earlier ones, were kids. One was a dance teacher, one was a nurse. All young girls. Like I said, the oldest one was 33.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Just yeah, it is. And want to say, even though I didn't, I got some of your comments there, but I want to thank the as always, and especially Katie. She's got a whole bunch of. She said, yeah, Times Square is like Disneyland now. So in New York City, it is. It's like night and day. You can go into the city now and not worry, fear for your life like you used to. But I do want to thank the usual suspects in the chat, as well as the millions
and millions
of true crime fans around the world, as they say every time. And we know this. We will never run out of cases to talk about. I mean, shit,
Mhm.
it seems like they're increasing.
Oh my gosh.
There's a new one every
100
day,
years of
right?
cases.
Yeah, that's like, did you ever see the movie Bruce Almighty?
Yes.
Remember when he gets, he's God, and he goes and he answers all the prayers on Yahweh instead of Yahoo,
Yeah.
and he answers like 2 million of them, and when he's done, there's 3 million new ones.
Exactly.
Kind of the same thing
Exactly.
with it's kind of the same thing with these cases. So make sure
Oh,
that you subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the Monty and the Pharaoh channel, please do so. You won't miss any episodes. You'll get notifications, and please do not forget to join yours truly and Dan Sebastiano tomorrow night at 7:00 with Dan and Benny in the ring. I think we're going to talk about the Royal Rumble that happened over the weekend. So for the bad girl, this is the Playa, the Needle Nose, telling everyone to stay safe and see you next crime. Night, folks.
woo!